Hello, I'm Hat, and welcome to All Hat No Cattle, AHNC for short. I'm sorry I'm a day late. My editing software refused to come out and play yesterday, so I wound up installing the new upgrades in hopes that it would fix it. As you can hear, it did, but it took so long to download the files and get the upgrades and presets back in order that it was way too late for me to start working on the video. Today's is another one of my ER stories. There's very little gore, but some relationship advice and gun safety instruction this time. This makes today's title entirely appropriate, that title being Just Blank Me. With that said, let's get to it. As I've mentioned in previous videos, I used to work third shift at a level 1 trauma center. I was on the trauma team with various low-level duties, but I was there for every step of the way until after I either wheeled the patient up to surgery or to one of the intensive care units, or the patient was discharged straight away. On 2 occasions, I was allowed to go into surgery and hold things, which eventually led to my becoming a surgical technician. I have a story about one of those surgeries that I'll share at a later date. Every now and then, someone would walk out of there with a bullet in their butt and a Band-Aid. We had to always disabuse them of the concept, often carried by people who watch too much TV, that we always removed the bullet, no matter where it was, when in fact there was no surgery involved unless it was in a place that was dangerous to the patient, say if it was right next to a major blood vessel or nerve. Something like that. You're not going to get lead poisoning from a little projectile buried in deep tissue. In this particular instance, we were told that an ambulance was coming in with a gentleman who had suffered a shotgun wound to the abdomen. Those are never good. Shotguns can do an incredible amount of damage, especially when they're up close, and the outcome is rarely good. Even if there's not too much blood loss, there is a very high risk of sepsis, or systemic blood infection, due to the puncturing of the intestinal tract. Your gut carries an astronomical number of bacteria, both good and bad, and by letting them loose into the body proper, you can wind up with an incredibly fast-acting and deadly infection. When our patient arrived, he was immediately wheeled into the trauma room, and we got down to it. I first did my part by cutting off all of his clothes. Remember that. Never get brought into the emergency room wearing your best leather jacket or your best little black dress. If you do, it will not be whole when you leave. It will probably be in pieces. Of course, you really won't have any choice in the matter, but I'm just saying. Why is this a problem? Because you do not simply undress someone when they've suffered a trauma. There are too many chances of fractures being made worse or a broken cervical vertebrae becoming a full-on paralysis. Things like that. At any rate, as I was cutting away, I noticed, along with everyone else, that this guy had a really swollen abdomen. The kind of belly people would jokingly refer to as a beer keg as opposed to a six-pack. He did have a fairly extensive wound right in the middle of that belly, so we rushed him off to X-ray as soon as we got an IV into him and stabilized any bleeding that may have been going on. As I remember, there wasn't a great deal. Once the X-rays were in, everyone took a close look. We noticed that there was a small spread of pellets in the wound, signifying he was shot at fairly close range. They did not appear to be what are known as double-aught buckshot, which are pellets approximately 3.5 of an inch across. Shot that size can do quite a bit of damage. It also appeared that there were not a great number of pellets in the wound. That would signify a small-bore shotgun, as the smaller the shell, the fewer the pellets it can contain. These look to be less than 0.2 of an inch across, so more akin to birdshot. That was looking at the top-down X-ray. When we looked at the lateral X-ray, we saw that the pellets had not traveled very far inward at all, which indicated that it was a small-bore shotgun, probably a 410, the smallest of the shotgun family. In fact, the shot had only penetrated about 2 to 2.5 inches from the surface. Since his belly was deep with fat, it was obvious that there was not any penetration into the abdominal cavity, meaning his gut was unaffected. This meant the odds of a systemic infection were quite low. Once the patient was out of the woods, we needed to ask for details as to what had occurred. So the head surgeon queried, "How did this happen?" The patient replied matter-of-factly, "She shot me." When asked, "Who shot you?" he replied, My wife, of course. Now our interest was piqued. The surgeon asked him to continue, and he did. We were arguing, yelling and screaming at each other. The fight went into the kitchen. We were really going at each other. She suddenly grabbed the shotgun I keep by the back door in case someone tries to break in and pointed it at my gut. How far away was she? Around 5 feet. Then what happened? I looked at her straight in the eye and said, "If you feel that way, then go ahead and fucking shoot me." I knew she couldn't hurt me because I knew it wasn't loaded. I keep the shells up on top of the refrigerator. Plus, I knew she didn't know how to shoot the damn thing. She's afraid of guns. I knew I was in the clear and could say anything I wanted to. It seems you were in for one hell of a surprise. Fuck yeah. The next thing I know, I heard a big bang and had a big pain in my belly. I hit the floor. I screamed, "Why did you do that?" She said, "You told me to." She dialed 911 and then walked into the front room. She let the paramedics in and stayed at the house while they drove me here. I don't even know if I can go back home. Why were you fighting? She found out about my girlfriend. One thing we tried not to do in the trauma room was laugh at a conscious patient. When they're unconscious, however, the jokes can often fly. It's the nature of the business. This time we had to laugh. Even he laughed once he saw the absurdity of his actions, although it did hurt him quite a bit. I can't remember if he went to surgery or not. His wound was pretty extensive, so it may have required a skin graft. In this instance, we probably did need to take out the pellets, though. Since it was a 410, there weren't quite as many as could have been, but they were pretty concentrated. I could be wrong. The big question in my mind was, could he go home after he was discharged? After all, his wife could have been in jail, or maybe she was waiting with an even bigger gun for when he got home. So there you have it. I think this serves as a great reminder that confronting anyone with a firearm when you don't have one yourself is a very bad idea. Very bad. Especially during a domestic situation as emotionally charged as this one. Add to that the dictum that every gun is loaded, no matter how much you know it isn't, and you can see how it was a foregone conclusion that our patient almost got his head blown off. Here's an extra anecdote to prove my point. Once I almost blew a hole through the ceiling of my lower floor apartment, as I was sure the 20 gauge single shot shotgun I had just taken out of the closet was unloaded. Definitely unloaded. I was going to point it up and pull the trigger. Doing that without the gun being loaded is called dry firing, and it's good practice. I knew it wasn't loaded. I never kept a loaded firearm in the house. They were always unloaded, with the shells up on a shelf somewhere else. I knew it wasn't loaded, are almost always famous last words. As I was about to pull the trigger, a little voice in my head, there was only one at the time, said to me that maybe, just maybe, I should look in the chamber. I opened the shotgun, and sure enough, a live shell popped out and ejected over my shoulder. Color me surprised. I can't imagine how much trouble I would have gotten into had I fired off that round. I certainly would have lost my security deposit. Well, that's it for now. I fully appreciate y'all coming by and checking out these anecdotes. Until next time, be well, and as always, thank you for your attention.